This is Coach Arvin Mosley Jr. I don't know if he really needs an introduction. He's here every single week. We all know him. He is the founder and CEO of his own company, Triple Impact Coaching. Just in case you don't know about Coach Mosley, I met him actually working at camp about 4 or 5 years ago and maintained a good friendship ever since then. And he has been big time in helping bring PhD Hoops to where it is right now. He's been a website contributor. He's been a supporter from the beginning. He's a former 11-year head men's basketball coach, both at the junior college level and the NCAA Division II level. He's one of the founders of the Northwest Basketball Coaches Forum. It's online every Wednesday. They bring in these head coaches and different coaches from around the country to speak. He's an outstanding player development skills trainer, coaches anywhere from kindergartners all the way up to professionals, has his own nonprofit company, the Dreams in Sight Foundation. And as you probably are, I'm curious to learn from him on our topic of the week, simple and effective half-court offense. So, Coach, do your thing, boss.
Okay, cool. Well, good to be here, guys and ladies. I appreciate it. I put my email right there. It's just my name at gmail.com. For the sake of transparency, I don't have a team right now. And so as opposed to me, being, doing like Doc did when he spoke, or some, Coach Huff when he spoke, I don't have a lot of hard, concrete things to share and show. I have a lot of philosophical things to share and show, and a lot of thoughts and things along those lines. And so over the years, I've ran triangle offense, I've ran passing cuts, I've ran 4 outs, 3 ins, 3 out, 2 ins. And so I've just put together some things to think about and just thoughts for you guys, nothing major. First thing I want to say is I want to make sure that we all know what I consider a triple impact coach. So real quick, the name of my company, Triple Impact Coaching. I think that we are all teachers, leaders, and caretakers. I talk a lot about that. A teacher is someone who ignites a passion in the subject matter. So if you are a true basketball teacher, you have your players are excited. The kids that you work with are excited because of you. Leader, I believe that, as a leader, we're always demonstrating who we are, right? It's not just what you say, it's what you do. Research shows that your kids cannot do what you say. Your kids are going to do what you do. There are studies that show over and over, you can tell someone to do something, but they're going to do what you do. So making sure that we're showing them something good. And then being a caretaker, right? I mean, I take that seriously. I am, every year, I probably am hundreds of kids' first coach. I work with a kindergarten kid, and they think that I'm their coach. We might work out once a week in a big class with 30 other people, but those kids look at me as their coach, and I take that seriously as being a caretaker, and I think all of you guys understand that as well. Just quick, some basic offenses that I've seen over the years and have used over the years or learned over the years. 4 out, 3 out, pass and screen away. I learned flex in 5th grade. I don't know about you guys, but that was the first offense I learned. I learned flex in 5th grade, and I didn't understand when I got to high school that guys kept messing it up. I didn't understand. It's like, man, I've been doing this for 6 years. UCLA, read and react, dribble, drive, motion. Some people call those the same thing, but these are basic offenses that we get a lot out of that people talk a lot about. I think before we can have an offense, before you can have a simple and effective offense, you've got to sit down and have a philosophy. You have got to define good shots and great shots. And our speaker last week that talked about 8, great, or late. We had on our coaching clinic last week, we had Jasmine Saborov, who is the assistant coach at Harvard women's basketball. And she talked about 8, great, or late. She wants a shot in the first 8 seconds. They either want a great shot or they want a late shot. They don't take good shots. They take early, quick shots, great shots, or late shots. And I just love that idea. We always tell our players, I think one thing that we do, I think sometimes as coaches that hurt us is when we say, take a good shot, but we have never defined it. I'm big on definitions. I'm big on defining what a good shot is, what a great shot is. Another piece of your offensive philosophy, you got to define how that ball is going to move and where your players are going to move. How and when your players move and where that ball goes. You've got to define that. Obviously, I think you got to have counters. Benchmarks to me are when we had the coach on a couple weeks ago on here that talked about the shooting percentage off of 2 ball reversals versus 3 ball reversals. The shooting percentage off of kickouts. shooting percentages off of in transition. I think you've got to decide which benchmarks that are important to you and what you want to measure. I was fortunate enough to coach against Danny Miles. If you do not know Danny Miles, look him up. He was a legendary coach at Oregon Tech. He is one of the top 5 winningest basketball coaches, period, in the game. I am not talking NCAA. We're talking in the game. And his benchmark was 33 three-pointers attempted and 14 or 15 offensive rebounds a game. That was his offensive philosophy. Lots of threes, get almost half of those offensive rebounds back, and their winning percentage when they did that, was, in the high 70s, low 80s. Whatever your benchmark is, I think you really got to dig into that. And I've learned so much watching you guys and listening to you guys speak. So some of you have great benchmarks and probably could speak to that better than I. And then the last thing about your offensive philosophy, it's got to be intuitive. Like if kids have to think, okay, the pass went there, I've got 8 options, that's not intuitive. It's got to be intuitive. It's got to be pass goes to the wing. I have those 2 things that I must do. The ball is in the post. What are the 2 things that I can do or the 2 things that I have to do? So whatever your offensive philosophy is, it's got to be intuitive. Your building blocks. This is an acronym. I threw it out last week. Some of you might have caught it. I'm going to go over it again because I do think this is pretty important for our offensive building blocks. This acronym is FACES. Coach Huff is my guy. He threw out acronyms a couple of weeks back, and so then I had to have my acronym game stepped up because I can't have Coach Huff out acronyming me. You know what I'm saying? So acronym, FACES, fundamentals. The fundamentals, I'm not talking basketball fundamentals. I'm talking your fundamentals. If your kid has to play in the pinch post, then they got to know how to do a reverse pivot, an inside pivot or an outside pivot, right? If you're a screening team, then your hard skills are screening. So you've got to really teach your hard skills. I also think actions, right? Okay, so your actions. Are you a cutting team? Are you a screening team? Are you a penetrating team? Are you a post-up team? To me, those are just different actions that are part of the game. And then the C is what I call concepts. A lot of different definitions for concepts. Concepts to me, DHO, dribble handoff, on-ball screens, not pick and roll. That's kind of like, everybody has those things that are important to them. I'm not a fan when people say, oh, let's do a pick and roll, because a roll is an option. And I don't think that you can define it right away. Oh, we're going to do a pick and roll. I don't think you can say that you're going to roll because you might do a pick and pop. You might slip. So I call them on-ball screens. You've got Princeton concepts, blocker mover concepts, horn concepts, screen the screener concepts, and triangle concepts. Whatever you're putting in, I think being able to define those concepts. And then the E is execution. It does us no good if we can't execute it. And that leads right into those small-sided games. I am huge on the small-sided games. I'm huge on the breakdowns. So earlier this year, I went to a local high school over Christmas break, and they were having a real tough time offensively. And we sat down, and I called it a freestyle riff. I did a freestyle with them. I said, Coach, give me 5 young ladies and show me your offense. And they showed me their offense, and I said, okay, well, we're going to take these 2 over here, and let's work on 2-girl ball, 2-girl action, 2 girls, 2 girls. And so we worked those 2 girls. And then we went to the other side and we did 2 girls. And then we added a 3rd girl and then a 4th and a 5th. And I literally showed these coaches how to take your whole part whole, how to take your whole team and small-side it to implement your offense. And it helped them. They ended up taking 2nd league and doing their thing. So not that because of me, but it was just, he told me, thank you, it helped him. So if you're not breaking your offense down regularly into 2-man or 2-girl action or 3-man, 3-girl action, I think you're really hurting yourself. And then you take that 2 or 3-man concepts and then you play out of it. You play 2-on-2, 3-on-3 in your out of your concepts and your actions. My last acronym of the day, the more you talk to other coaches, the more I listen, these 4 words come up over and over and over. You have to have spacing and timing so that you can get the right angles and have some rhythm. You got to have spacing and timing to get the right angles for your rhythm and the rhythm. Again, you come back to defining your offense. You've got to decide what type of spacing is important to you. You've got to decide, is it 12 feet? Is it 15 feet? Are you building triangles over here? Are we working pinch post, the slot, whatever terminology, wherever you are? I was always taught, we always did the first 3 weeks with tape on the floor. Right? I don't know about, again, if you're running a structured offense, I always put tape on the floor because I think that's a great visual. I don't think that's rocket science. Kids know if I'm not on an X, I'm in the wrong spot. And so I think we used to use blue tape, and we would tape the floor up on both ends. And when we scrimmaged, it was real easy to get a snapshot if kids were in the right spot. Timing. Again, you got to practice your timing. The coach, my man from Charlotte, maybe, that said that they didn't play 5-on-5. I don't know if you guys remember him. He was on last week or 2 weeks ago, and he said that they don't play 5-on-5. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I mean, but the timing piece without defense has always been difficult for me to teach. And so part of that timing comes back to our small-sided games. Angles, right? Well, I remember listening to Bobby Knight speak one day, and he just talked about basketball as just a big math equation. And it's funny that the older I get, the slower I get, the slower the game gets. When I go to the YMCA and play, man, it's just so slow. I can pick my angles so easily because of the spacing and the timing, right? So just taking your time, finding the right angles. And then the last thing is rhythm. Anybody who's a great basketball player should be able to step on the court with anybody else, and that rhythm is just there. And if you don't have it, then you got to practice it. So teach your players to be a star. So anyway, real quick, I know it was short and brief, nothing real concrete. I'm not a concrete guy. I'm a philosophical guy. I don't have a team that I can say that this is what we do per se. I ran the triangle. My 2 best teams I ever had, we ran the triangle. 2 best teams I ever had is we ran the triangle, and kind of like Cabral talked about, we were in the regular season. We were 2-9 in the preseason, 2-10. I remember Cabral talked about being 2-13. Well, we were 2-9 in the preseason and flipped it around and ended up taking second in league and making it to the semifinals, all on the triangle offense. And we were only maybe 2 or 3 options out of it, right? We were doing 2 passes to the corner, 2 passes to the pinch post, and played from there. But because of the spacing, the timing, and the angles and the rhythm that we were able to get, the triangle worked great for us. So there's that.
You talked about your philosophy, and you mentioned your intuitive portion of your philosophy. What did you do to work on that part of your philosophy with your teams? How'd you teach it?
Minimize what I introduced, like really parcel it out. And so instead of, you talk about that whole part whole, you might show the whole offense, but you might only show the whole option number 1, and really limiting the overload, right? The info overload is one thing that I did, just really making sure that, okay, you made this pass. This is your first, this is the cut we're working on. It's like muscle memory. So we would work on option 1 over and over and over before we'd introduce another option. I think sometimes as coaches, we know so doggone much, and we've been doing it. My son asked me the other day, my 7-year-old made his first left-hand layup, like we were practicing, and he made a left-hand layup, and he said, "Dad, when'd you make your first left-hand layup?" I don't remember, and I think sometimes as coaches, we've been doing this for so long, we don't remember how we learned or when we learned how to read the defense. And so we forget that we have to slow it down and teach our kids that. So to make it intuitive, you parcel out one little bit at a time. Option 1 only. Then option 2, we only go to the right side. Option 1 to the right side, and then you work on the left side, as opposed to trying to show the whole thing and see what they figure out. So that was one way, Coach Jamie, that I did it.
I had a question on your leadership portion. I know, I don't know if it was you or somebody in our group that was saying they follow by your example, right? They can't learn; they're just going to follow by what you're doing. And I have plenty of kids that say, "Oh man, this guy fits the mold of being a captain or a leader," but he's not as vocal, because I want guys to be vocal. Because when I was on the court, I'm vocal. Do you look for specific guys? You kind of let them maturate and bring them under your wing to develop them, because you can't teach anybody nobody's going to naturally be a leader, right? You got to kind of teach them. So what's your philosophy on that?
Well, forced leadership isn't leadership. So if I have to force it and oh, you're a senior, you're a captain now, or you're the leading scorer, you're a captain now. If I have to force it, it's not leadership. So I think there's that piece. I think you have to make it clear that that leadership is not, you don't earn leadership by your averages, by your stats. Like, stats don't determine leaders. And so I think it's important that your program and your players understand that he's a leader because of what he does, not because of what he says. He's a leader because he's always on time. He understands the game. He knows where he's supposed to be. He's a good communicator. I think we have to like get away from making a senior the leader because they're a senior. You know, I've been wanting to coach since I was probably in 5th grade. Like, people ask me, what do you want to do when you grow up? I wanted to play in the NFL and I wanted to coach high school basketball. Those were my 2 dreams. And so that's how I always approached the game, though. And I was that kid that always asked questions. I was one of the first 2-year captains at my community college. I was a captain as a freshman and a sophomore. I won the captain's award as a bench player my senior year on a national contending team. I came off the bench, but I was the captain's award winner. And but that's who I was. I was a captain. I was a leader. And so I think you have those people on your program right now. And we just got to make sure that we don't like try to force somebody to be the leader because, well, you know, everyone looks up to you because you're the leading scorer. People look up to you at the end of the shot clock, but that doesn't mean on Friday night that they're looking up to that person. And so I think it's real important that we don't force leadership on somebody that doesn't deserve it or hasn't earned it.
Coach, I have a question with that. You know, it's interesting you say this. Do you prefer, or do you mostly see, you know, more vocal, boisterous, you know, in your face? You know, you see Jordan, you know, you watch the documentary, and not many people, it's funny because I grew up, he was one of my idols, you know, and these young guys don't really know as much, but he wasn't as likable. But that was just him. But he demanded, and he did not want to lose. And I think Kobe kind of fell into that as we got to know Kobe and we see his stuff. Yep. Do you think that's a better leader, or do you prefer that? Or do you also not mind a guy who just shows it, it's that quiet leader, but just demonstrates on the court?
I mean, I think most of us would probably rather not have our players cussing other players out because they're not meeting expectations. I mean, most of us probably, but if cussing that kid out comes from another player, he's going to respect it more than he does from me potentially. And so, I mean, I don't think that's great leadership. I don't think any of us should. I just think in 2020, cussing kids out and yelling at kids is not necessarily the move, even as a peer, even player to player. But if the players are going to follow him, cool. I mean, I just think when it happens, and you might have I've had quiet leaders, and quiet leaders are not necessarily the best leaders sometimes, man. It's tough. You want somebody who's a little more vocal. You know, I don't know if that answers your question, but you would prefer that it wouldn't. But it takes a special guy to prove it day in and day out. I was like that. I was a guy that you might score more than me. Cool, but you're not going to beat me in a sprint. You might score more than me, but I'm going to take a charge. I'm going to dive for loose ball. And so I earned my stripes to be able to cuss a player out. So I think it takes I've been that kind of leader that was a yeller and bombastic and cussing guys out. But I earned it in the weight room. I earned it on the track. I earned it that way. Never earned it by scoring points, though. I earned it every other way. So, but I just think that it's, you know, it takes a special personality for the other players to respect that too, to not want to fight this guy all the time. Well, he's talking smack to me. But again, if a captain earns it, he earns it. Or if a leader earns it, like, we can call somebody a captain, but if they haven't earned it, players aren't going to follow them.
Right.
So, yeah, I think, you know, I don't like to force that leadership on somebody.
One question I had for Coach Mosley or for anybody, we've all talked a lot about offensive philosophies and a lot of philosophical stuff, like defining good shots, defining great shots. How much of that for you guys is team-based, and how much of that is individual personnel-based? And how long does it take you to kind of come up with that during the season? Is it on the first day, the first month?
I would say initially it's team-based, right? Because you want to have a team philosophy before you have philosophy for individual players. You got to have what makes you feel comfortable first. So I would say it starts as a team. This is our philosophy. We don't shoot mid-range. That is our philosophy. And then you adjust according to your personnel, then I would say. Because I promise you, if Doc had a player that was just excelled at a 1 or 2 dribble pull-up, then that kid would have a different colored light than the rest of the kids for a mid-range. That's just a reality of we have to be ready to adapt, or become extinct. So that would be part of it. If you're a college coach who's recruiting players, you probably have a pretty decent feel on their skill set coming in. You've watched them play high school ball or travel ball. So when they come in, you ought to have a decent feel for how they can fit into your system, or how you need to adjust your system to them. If you're a high school coach, you're getting a kid who comes in at 13, 14 years old as a freshman, and you kind of get what you get with those kids, but you still, I think the best coaches, the most successful coaches, adapt their system to their players. I don't know, I hear about coaches, we had to change our offense. And then when I hear a coach is saying I have to change my offense, it lets me know that that I don't think they didn't believe in what they were doing. Because if you believe in what you're doing, you adjust, you tweak, you don't necessarily change your offense. But I get coaches who call me all the time and say, hey, 4 outs not working, we're going to horns. We're going to run all horns. I'm like, dude, it's January. You got 4 games left, and you're going to horns now. And so I think to me, that's a sign of weakness when you start changing your offense. But if you are a team that shoots a lot of threes and layups and you don't do the mid-range, but a guy comes in that can hit it, I think you adjust accordingly. So, but I want to let you guys know that the Northwest Coaches Foundation is a group that we run. We do weekly clinics. We've been going on Wednesdays. We're moving till Sunday nights. So anything anybody needs from me, Coach Mosley Jr. online, Arvin Mosley, Google me, check it out. I just appreciate the platform. And while I have the mic, I just want to make sure I tell you, thanks, Richie. You are, you're a game changer, dude. Like, this is literally changing the game. I mean, so we appreciate that. And we think sometimes that, it's just a coaching clinic, but no, man. I mean, people are talking about it. I'm learning every week. And so, you're a game changer, Richie. Appreciate you, brother.